Free market capitalism. It's an idea that's growing in popularity in the United States, largely as a reaction to the socialist policies of Barack Obama, who has implemented such draconian measures as to, well...
We got those pesky bailouts, and the total Fed commitments, last I checked, was $13.9 trillion. I don't care much about the exact numbers. I know more than half of it was done under Obama's watch, and the bailouts alone are enough to consider Obama one of the worst presidents of all time, and I'll have a link to the description where I found the 13.9 trillion number. It's huge. Also, Obama has kept in the Patriot Acts and kept the wars. Also, Obama has not made any attempts to reduce controls on industries, remove barriers to entry in industry, or make any attempt at shifting tax burden away from the working rich and onto the super rich, right? Whenever a politician says he wants to tax the rich, he doesn't mean the politically connected super rich. He means he wants to tax the up-and-coming rich, the innovators, the people who are earning their money because of their innovations and are, trying to shoot up and are the people who do make the world better. Not saying that they're trying to make the world better, but they do end up making the world better. And these taxes on the working rich are a way to prevent them from knocking the super rich off of their pedestals. Instead of trying to tax the super rich, Obama gives them bailouts, which will be paid by everyone, by society in aggregate in the form of inflation. First off, capitalism is a vague term with multiple meanings, and from what I can tell, it's just a slur at this point, and it's a broken word, it's better to just throw it out, so let's just deal with the term free market. Second off, what you said here is a lie, and I think you know it. The recent uptick in free market thought happened during the Ron Paul presidential campaign, which was only made possible by the internet. And let's not kid ourselves, advocates of freedom are a minority just about everywhere, but on the internet they have become a much larger minority. You, TJ, were a big Ron Paul fan, if I recall correctly. But the core free marketers who were there at the beginning and are here now were not motivated by any of this Tea Party bullcrap. It was back in 06 and 07 under Bush and the Patriot Act and those first wave of bailouts. Now, I also oppose the welfare state in total, but first things first. Obama is doing some awful things that everyone, left and right, can hate.
Free market capitalism proposes a free market. What is a free market? A market without government restrictions, without any regulation.
No, controls. When someone says regulation, they mean a state control. An example would be the catalytic converter. To meet U.S. federal emission standards, General Motors installed catalytic converters on all their cars. Japanese companies met the U.S. federal emission standards by just having much cleaner engines themselves, and they didn't need to put on a catalytic converter. General Motors, however, lobbied the government for a control. That is that all cars had to have catalytic converters. This then forced the Japanese companies to refit all of their cars with catalytic converters, delaying their entry into the U.S. market, giving GM a temporary advantage, and screwing over the consumer in the process. Right? It was just a control that was motivated by GM wanting to keep out Japanese competitors for a little while. To call a control a regulation is to assume the very thing you are trying to prove, that these controls in fact regulate the market in some way by some standard by which you would say it's a good thing.
Free market capitalism is characterized by the voluntary exchange of goods and services between individuals. For instance, if I have a cheeseburger and you have a harmonica, and I want a harmonica and you want a cheeseburger, we can come to an arrangement whereby I exchange my hamburger for your harmonica, and we're both happy. You see, because I have the harmonica that I need, and you have the cheeseburger that you need. Now, the cardinal sins of laissez-faire capitalism are coercion and fraud. You see, I can't tell you I have a delicious, juicy cheeseburger, and then you get it, and it's a rotten, moldy, disgusting cheeseburger, because that would be fraud. And
yes, you can commit fraud on a free market. You can make something, say it's awesome, and then it turns out to be shit. Lots of companies have done that, and unless they have some barrier to entry, they tend to go out of business. Lots of video game companies pop into my mind on this.
I also cannot put a gun to your head and say, give me your harmonica, or I will shoot you in the head and you will die from the bullet wound that the gunshot will inflict upon you. Because that would be coercion, and that's not fair. So, fraud and coercion, the only two things not permitted in a free market system. That's why free market people are against taxation, because they feel that taxation is a form of coercion. The government says, pay your taxes or we'll put you in jail, which does, admittedly, sound like coercion.
Sure you can. If you have a gun, you can probably shoot a whole bunch of people before someone shoots you and stops you on your killing spree. That's just a fact of reality. I don't know what you mean by fraud and coercion can't be, are not permitted. You seem to still be thinking along status lines, as if we decide upon the rules, as if we decide upon the law before entering reality. No, law is emergent. I can explain why fraud and coercion in the long run won't be profitable strategies on a free market, and since firms are greedy and want to make profits, they won't do them in the long run, engage in fraud and coercion. I think that in the immediate transition to a free market, many firms would engage in fraud and coercion, thinking that it's going to work, but it wouldn't, and those firms would fail. But the thing is, on a free market, there's no state, so saying anything isn't permitted on a free market is a complete non sequitur. I mean, we can try to predict what will happen, but saying it's not permitted doesn't make sense because there's no state, there's no policemen that are going to come up and stop you from doing something. Okay, only actors, non-state actors, are going to stop you from doing things.
Now, it's very important to understand that in a free market system, people are the owners of themselves, and they are the owners of their labor. So, they can exchange labor for goods, but they cannot be property themselves. You cannot own another human being because that violates free market capitalism, because people are the owners of themselves and their own labor. And that is a central tenet of free market capitalism. You cannot have free market capitalism if that tenet is not in place.
Now, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, can't own another human being. Of course you can own another human being. In historical examples of virtually completely free markets, there has been slavery. You can have slavery on a free market. It's possible. It has been done. Think of it this way. The reason we don't need a state to enforce law against murder and rape is because there is a strong enough intersubjective consensus against murder and rape. If there is a strong enough intersubjective consensus in a given geographical area in favor of slavery, then slavery will be sustained on a free market. Now, I don't think slavery would be sustained on a free market in the U.S. today, except like in people's basements. But openly it would not be sustained because so few people support slavery. However, people do support the state. And even if the population generally opposes slavery, they can support the state, and then the state can support slavery. And I call this proxy support of slavery. If the population's support of the state is greater than their opposition to slavery, then the population will support slavery by proxy. This is what I believed happened in the southern United States. If it were a free market, if the southern U.S. was a free market from the beginning, slavery would have ended much sooner because people would have become psychologically more evolved and more opposed to slavery, and it would have not been sustained on a free market. But the Southerners supported the state more than they opposed slavery. And given how skeptical Southerners are about government, that should tell you how little they cared about the plight of the black slaves. Right? That is, I think they oppose slavery generally, but not enough to do anything about it.
The idea of free market capitalism is that it's supposed to lift everyone up. It's supposed to create all this new wealth and prosperity and equality and all this great stuff without any sort of nasty big brother figure, without Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan to keep us in line. We will be peaceful and cooperative based on our own rational self-interest.
I don't know about equality. I think a free market would be more equal than the current situation in the U.S., but if you want equality for its own sake, then you should just be a communist. But broadly speaking, more free markets have more equal distributions of wealth than statist societies, right? We can just look at the Gini map of the inequality map, right? And yes, the third world is very statist, broadly speaking, and thus highly unequal, right? Because the few people with money can lobby the state to get barriers to entries, which concentrates and institutionalizes wealth, and that's what really creates the inequality. It is the state grants of monopoly privilege. And of course, monopoly originally started out as monopoly, right? And so the inception of the term monopoly was a state grant of monopoly privilege. All this stuff about monopolies forming on a free market, this is all just very modern stuff, and it's all politically motivated economic theory.